I'm gonna. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I do have a few people still coming in through the waiting room, so um, I think everybody is in. I don't know. I was a little bit in a little bit of a euphoric state this morning with this all being done and over. Candidly, and I don't mind sharing this with all of you. I've had over the last couple of weeks some real blood pressure issues. Like my blood pressure has been higher than it's ever been. I doubled up my medication. I got put on a new medication, and it was crazy. Last night at 7:20, I took it, and it was back to complete normal. And I'm like, it's amazing what stress can do to your body and how your body reacts to that. I actually met with my doctor early this morning, and things are back down to a normal range. So I guess that's the impact of stress, especially for an old man like myself. But so congratulations to everybody on surviving. I think everybody was working up until the final hour last night. Live transfers were hot and heavy. I know a lot of agents took a ton of live transfers, so thank you for your help on that. I think we pushed. I haven't seen the final numbers yet, but I think we pushed close to 4,000 live transfers that were generated yesterday alone. So for those of you who are riding the live transfer bandwagon, hopefully you got some some nice sales out of that and some good work and some follow up. I'll say we're not done quite yet. Um, I think most of you understand that we have up until January 15th to get, enrollments done for a February 1st effective date. So if people miss the deadline, I do think live transfers are going to continue to flow. So don't shut things down if you want to continue to work. I think there's continues to be a lot of opportunity in this last 30 days. And then there's always the outside chance that the government is going to do something or pass something or change something. I think there's a better than a small chance that something will happen here that will bring back some level of enhanced subsidies. I think the government has to do something. I don't think they're just going to do nothing. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what it's going to be. I have no insider information. My only thought would be is if that does happen, I think we'll have an opportunity during January, February, and maybe even March to circle back with clients and help them recalibrate things and maybe make adjustments, to their plan or what they're enrolled in. So we'll kind of see how that all pans out. Um, so I wanted to just go through. I had a whole list of things that I jotted down that I wanted to talk through this morning. First of all, if you haven't updated the open enrollment period, the OEP tracker, I sent out an email on that this morning. We would really ask that you get your numbers, your final numbers updated. And if you had failed to put in numbers in previous weeks, just load whatever you missed into this week so that we can have that final tally. Around 11 o'clock here, we actually have to, Rachel's going to be providing that information to our home office through a national tracker tool. And Dan Garrison has asked that we try to be as accurate as we can on that so that we have a realistic line of sight into what we actually did. And just to recap on that very quickly, any new active enrollments that we did is what we want to count, unless we were re-enrolling them with the same carrier. So if you're moving them from, one product with Better to another product with Better, we don't report that. So carrier to carrier. But anything where they were switching or was an active re-enrollment or a new client, we want to count those particular applications on that OEP tracker. So you guys can maybe even work on that while you're listening to me ramble on today. But I'd appreciate it if you could get that OEP tracker wrapped up. We are going to continue that tracker because technically OEP goes through January 15th as of right now. And so that is a tracker we're going to continue through the holidays and continue to work on. So let's just make sure that we're updating that each week. From this point forward, we have two trackers that we ask you to put your numbers into. There's our main tracker, which is the Jessup Agency Google Docs call-in. And that's the one where we put in all of our annual volume by line of business, and it tallies up what our FYCRs are. We do that year round. So that's something I'd ask everybody to do by 10 o'clock every Friday morning. And then the only other one we have going for the next 4 weeks is this 2026 OEP tracker, where we're just tracking the number of ACA applications that we've actually submitted. So those are the two in play for the next 4 weeks or so here, and we are going to continue to do those through the holidays. I will say, whether or not you put numbers into trackers are really an indication to myself and the other leaders as to your level of engagement. If you're not putting numbers in, candidly, it's really hard to support you financially, or with one-off trainings and things like that. I think it's definitely shows participation, and we need those numbers So I just really ask and press on you to make sure those are updated and in place. I did want to announce, and I'll be sending this out a little bit later today. Next Tuesday during this time, I'm going to be hosting a live territory event. It's actually going to run for 2 hours, so we're going to run from 10 to 12 next Tuesday. And what I want to do during that 2 hour time slot is I want to recap our successes. We'll have kind of some final numbers to look at, show you guys where we're standing, kind of going into the holidays on a number of different fronts from a numbers perspective. I'm also hopeful that we're going to have a couple of guest speakers I'm working on to join us. And we'll be talking some strategy. We'll also be hearing from some of the top performers on the team and just how they accomplished what they accomplished. There's a number of people on the team. Cav wrote an incredible amount of applications this year. Kevin McIntyre, Ray Plagans, Tony Letcher, Derek Mabry, Gary Boverhoff. I saw Joel Mulder had an incredible year and from a cross-selling perspective, so we want to highlight some of that. So I'd ask you guys get on your schedule next week, 10 to 12. Hopefully you can make it for all the time. I understand it's kind of short notice, so if something's up and you're not able to log in, it will be completely virtual, so you can do it from wherever. But I'd ask to see what you can do to join that session because we'll have a lot that we want to look at there. Um, there are some states that are still rolling. And so I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that, especially if you're selling across state lines. There's several states that have extended their enrollment deadlines until 12/31. There is no news about the federal exchange doing that. So anybody who's on the federal exchange, that ended last night for a 1/1 effective date. But it looks like the states that I know of are California, Maryland, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and as of late last night, it looks like Illinois also extended their enrollment deadline till December 31st. So I'll be sending those states out to all of you. But again, California, Maryland, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Illinois. I think those are the ones that I know of right now that they're all state-based exchanges, and so they have the ability at a state level to say we're going to do things differently than the feds, and so they have all chosen to extend things through the end of the month for a 1/1 effective date. So if you are working in those states, there's still opportunities to get that 1/1 effective date. Um, so any questions about any of that before we jump into kind of some post OEP cleanup ideas and thoughts? Before I jump there, Cav, I'm just curious. How did you finish things up? How are you feeling this morning? You're the most veteran agent on this call and probably on the team at this point, but you have any thoughts or insights to share?
Over. That's it.
It's over.
It's over.
Would
Uh,
you say that this was one of the most interesting enrollment seasons you've been through?
I wouldn't say interesting. I mean, it definitely was the busiest with all the plan exits I had to deal with. But and I told Silas this a few times with some of the structure and process I have in place. I wrote more applications than I ever have, but I probably this was the least stressful open enrollment I've ever had, just because I've just got things dialed in. Using my scheduler, I mean, I thought VanillaSoft was very important with some of the capabilities we could do. Connecture. I mean, because I literally could just meet with people, even Health Sherpa. I mean, it's literally you pop in their drugs and doctors, and it just tells you what plan. So I was doing most of my meetings in 15 minutes. I'd block out 30, but we were just getting them done. But it was just having a very structured schedule. I did all of this Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. I did not work any weekend. I think 2 Saturdays I came in just to clean up files. And then last night, I, I had my last call at 5:30 and stayed till 7:30 just updating enrollments. But other than that, it was in 40 hours. And I think I wrote 360 Medicare plans and 70 something ACA plans. So it was just a very structured schedule and technology that allowed me to do this. And I had very little stress.
Well, and I think it's a testament to what you're doing because many of the agents on the call, don't have staff members, and I think many of our agents are thinking about adding staff members after this last season. I think all of us get to a point in our career. I know early in my career, someone told me once you get to the point that you have about 500 clients, it's tough to do everything on your own, and you need to start thinking about it or leveraging technology like Steve does. To do that kind of volume without an assistant is and or a sub agent is pretty insane. But you've really gotten really good with the systems and the processes and built those out so that they're just super super efficient. We'll probably tap into and ask more questions about that as we kind of move into Q1 because I think a lot of agents can learn a lot from what you're doing and how you're doing it. um, I think like you said in the past, you take away the excuses for anybody who's new in the business thinking they can't do it without an enormous staff because you did it and you did it well. So congratulations. I know it was a crazy season, but you had an incredible year of sales. So well done.
Thank you.
Anything else to add?
Okay, yeah, it's over, but now it's just beginning again. I mean, the business doesn't stop. I mean, when people sit there and think, okay, there's open enrollment and rest of year. No, we're in a year-long business because there's going to be people that are going to need help. Um, I think we're going to find a lot of people that maybe drop the ball, and then when they get their first ACA premium that hits their account, they're like, we're going to get phone calls on, I need help. And so, I'm going to kind of take the next couple of weeks off, but then January 5th, it's right back at it.
Yep. And I would encourage you all. I'm going to talk through some things today that you can be working on over the next couple of weeks. I would encourage you, though, especially those of you that ran hard and are just completely fried right now, you need to take some time with your family, time to rest, time for mental health. I mean, I think all of those things are really important. I would also say, though, there's probably some of you on the call that you're new enough in the business and you're young enough in the business and you're not making the money you need to yet, you don't have time to slow down. You have to continue to run hard, and there will be opportunities to do that through the holidays. So this doesn't have to be an end point or a stopping point for you if you're wanting and needing and willing, to continue to work hard. So just because some of us are slowing it down for a hot minute doesn't mean everybody has to slow it down for a hot minute. So a few things I wanted to go through from a post OEP cleanup perspective because I do feel like now we go into cleanup phase. I actually had a meeting with my staff yesterday morning, just talking through, okay, what does the next 2 weeks look like? What do we need to accomplish? What do we need to get cleaned up? Because I do think there have been things that have been, that we haven't done that we should have. There's cleanup on notes and making sure, binder checks are paid and all, or yeah, binder payments are made and all that kind of stuff. So I'd kind of put together a list of things that I think everybody should be focusing on. One would be updating your documentation. And for most of us, that would be inside of the VanillaSoft CRM, but it's cleaning up appointments, making sure that we're putting notes in as to what happened, make sure that we understand, who our clients are. Um, I maintain several different spreadsheets. One of them is what we call a sales spreadsheet. So every single time we make a sale, I've got a Google Docs spreadsheet. I'm going to show it to you guys here, just to kind of show you what ours looks like. But we keep a running tally of every sale that we make so that we can always go back to that if we need to. I think this becomes more important, especially once you start having staff members. But this is what ours actually looks like. And we've got two columns out here on the right left hand side that we are just tracking. Was it notated on the under 65 spreadsheet, and was the AC app actually completed in Health Sherpa? I asked one of my staff members, Sherry, to go back and just do a bit of an audit to make sure that everybody that we thought we'd enrolled actually was enrolled in Health Sherpa before the deadline last night. So that's what those two columns are. We just added those in the last week or so to make sure that we could kind of document and track things and just make sure. We then use the date, and what this date is this is the date that the enrollment happened. We document the first name, the last name, the carrier, the product, the effective date, the annual volume, which is monthly premium times 12, who the AOR is and who it was entered by. So if I have a staff member like Nikki helping me with that, we notated that. how many heads. So that really only applies if there's if it's an ACA plan, because we need to track how many heads were on that particular policy or how many belly buttons. Same thing. We also notate, was this a re-enrollment with the same carrier? Because if it was, we don't want to track it on the call-in. So we notate whether or not it was an re-enrollment with the same carrier. If it was a Medicare Advantage plan, was it a new to Medicare Advantage plan? Because we report those a little bit differently on the Google Docs call-in. And then is it actually entered on the call in? And we have a lot of these that haven't been entered on the call in. But we keep these, and you guys can see back to, looks like I started this back in 2018 when I started kind of tracking my sales like this. And it's just a running tally that we're just adding more to the bottom. And so it looks like, I mean, we're pushing my team, it looks like almost 1,050 total applications that we have written this year. And each application we count individually. So you look at this with Kaylin right here. We sold her an accident-wise, a critical illness, and a hospital-wise. Those are three separate applications. And so we count each one of those in here. This is also nice too, because if we ever have a question about what we sold somebody, or it's not showing up on the carrier side, or there's some sort of this is our documentation that we can actually go back to. So this is, to me, part of the post-sale documentation process is getting a good handle on, who did you sell? What did you sell them? And is that properly updated and notated inside of the CRM or inside of whatever tracking system it is that you're using? So I think that's something that we really need to get done. I also would say if you don't do that like quickly or in the moment, it's hard to remember 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks from now what you did or what happened with a client. And so I really, really push on my team and staff to make sure that we're documenting in the moment. I know some of that falls to the wayside a little bit as we get really, really busy, but I do think that back end cleanup on the notes and just documenting things are really, really important. I also think over these next 2 weeks, it's important for you to go into Health Sherpa and just look through the enrollments that you did and check for action required or missing documents. So some of the applications that we did through Health Sherpa, when you pull up that eligibility summary, I hope you all looked at those eligibility summaries because that's the final determination of how much government subsidy they're eligible for. But if there are any additional action steps needed, that is notated on that eligibility summary. And within Health Sherpa, it's actually notated one of the columns when you look at your existing clients or book of business, you can see where action is required or action is needed. So, if there's an income verification request or a citizenship request or some other documentation that healthcare.gov required, it's going to be notated in Health Sherpa and also on that eligibility summary. I will say if you scroll down on that eligibility summary and there's additional information that's needed, it will give you detailed instructions on what is needed, what kind of documentation they're looking for, and then how to submit that. Now, the client can submit that to healthcare.gov on their own, or you can submit it for them through Health Sherpa or through healthcare.gov. We prefer to do it ourselves. Like we ask our clients to get us the information so that we can log it in their file, we can upload it, we can make sure that the information actually gets there. On most of those requests for information, there is a timeline on it, and for a lot of them, it's like March seemed to be the first deadline for many of them. So they give them 90, 120 days to kind of get that information submitted. But we don't want to let those slip through the cracks because if they don't get the information that they want, they could either lose the policy or lose their subsidy if they're getting a subsidy. So it is pretty important that you stay on top of that and make sure that those action required or missing documents are taken care of. Another thing that we need to spend some time on, I believe, over the next 2 weeks is the binder payments. So that's the first month's premium payment. Health Sherpa also will tell you if a binder payment has been made. However, I don't 100% trust what Health Sherpa is telling us because there are times that consumer made a payment directly to the insurance carrier, and that insurance carrier may not have reported that back to healthcare.gov or to Health Sherpa. So you can kind of use the data in Health Sherpa as a bit of a guide, but I feel like the most correct information is going to be on the carrier portals. So when you log into your book of business at Ambetter or Priority or CareSource or Anthem, you can actually go in there and make sure everybody has made their premium payments or their binder payments and gotten that set up. None of the insurance companies will send out an insurance card to the consumer until they make their first month's premium payment. Now, technically, they have into January to make that payment, but I don't want to deal I don't want to miss anybody, right? So we want to make sure that people are taken care of because if they don't pay that first month's premium, there's going to come a point in January where that policy is not effectuated and it goes inactive and it's canceled, and then unless we're in the first 15 days and they can reapply for a 2/1 effective date, they're kind of locked out of coverage unless they have a qualifying event later in the year. So binder payments are really important, and you want to make sure you're on top of that. Something else that I think you've got to keep a good eye on is what policies need to be canceled based on action that you took during the AEP or the OEP season. So, a couple of different scenarios that I think you've got to think through. One would be if you had a client who was on an on exchange product and they went to an off exchange product. Just moving them and enrolling them in an off exchange product is not going to cancel their on exchange plan. Those systems do not speak to each other. So that consumer in the second half of the month here, if they went from on exchange to off exchange, they need to get with the marketplace, or you need to go into Health Sherpa and terminate that plan for them, or they need to call healthcare.gov and terminate that plan. Same thing if somebody's going from off exchange to on exchange. So they were on an AM Better off exchange last year. This year they decided to chase government subsidies and they went on exchange. That off exchange plan is not going to automatically cancel. So they need to call their carrier and do that. Sandra mentioned also advise them to discontinue their auto pay. If they're changing carriers, I think that's a great idea. If they're moving from one company from AmBetter to CareSource for next year, make sure they kill that auto pay with AmBetter and then call in and cancel the policy. Um, just not paying the premium is not a good way to cancel the policy. They actually need to terminate it either with healthcare.gov or at the carrier level. Um, One of the things that can be problematic is that if they just disable their auto pay and the policy is still in force into January and they don't actually cancel it till February and they've got that 1 month that they just chose not to pay for, there's a good chance that in future years, if they ever want to go back to that insurance company is going to say, you've got to pay up this balance that you owe us before we're going to let you come into the plan. That's kind of one of the new regulations. So we just want to make sure that we get stuff canceled by the end of the month if it needs to be canceled. Another situation you got to think about is if somebody's going from an ACA plan to a creative alternative, like short term or HPG or MedMutual Protect. If they're no longer going to be on that ACA plan because they're going somewhere else, they've got to cancel that ACA plan. Another situation would be if they're going from a Med Sup to a Medicare Advantage plan. So if they're canceling their Medicare supplement plan to go to a Medicare Advantage plan, they have to call and cancel that Medicare supplement plan towards the end of the month. So you got to look at all those clients that you moved from Med Subs to MAPD. And then the last one that I can think about, and there may be more scenarios, but would be if somebody was like on a Health Protector Guard or a short-term plan and they went to an ACA plan and they don't want to keep that other coverage in place, they've got to cancel that. So we just have to be thoughtful about where we help clients move from and move to, and advise them if they need to make any changes or adjustments or call in, to make cancellations on any of that. Does anybody have questions about those cancellations or any thoughts there?
And I just put in the chat, people need to contact the marketplace to cancel their ACA policies, not the carrier.
They're on exchange, correct?
Yeah.
That's correct. If it's an off exchange product, you've got to contact the carrier. If it's an on exchange product, they've got to call into healthcare.gov to terminate that. Other questions about that? Okay. So something else that I'm encouraging people to do, and I've actually asked my staff to do, is to clean up your VanillaSoft queue. And what I mean by that is log into VanillaSoft and let it start serving things up to you. Because if it's serving things up to you, there's a reason they're being served up to you. Now, some of them might be in error, and that's okay. You can either result them, use a result code to move them out, or if it's just something you want to kick the can down the road, you can click the follow up 1 day, follow up 1 week, or follow up 1 month, and just kick that can down the road, and it'll get served up to you at a future date. But I will tell you personally, my VanillaSoft queue, when I go in there, it serves some things up to me that I probably would have forgotten if I hadn't been paying attention. And I think all of you want to get to the point where your queue is clean here post AEP OEP. So just go in there and result things as it comes up, read the notes, figure out what's going on with that one. If you don't want to deal with it or you want to wait till January, say, follow up 1 month and kick it out till after the first of the year. If it's something that you just need to clean up now and in the moment, or it's something that needs to be done, put the notes in, disposition or result it accordingly. So yes. So Stefan asked a question here. I just saw it pop up. Let me get to it. I need to scroll down. Is there a fix for the duplicate vanilla soft contacts after completing enrollment through Health Sherpa? I would say more to come on that. I had two conversations about that this morning. So there were a lot of duplicate records that were created, and that has been fixed as far as it creating duplicates as of last week. But there are some duplicates in the system. What I'm doing is I'm actually merging those now, but I actually worked with home office a little bit this morning. We're going to try to get some additional instructions, job aid videos out on what the most appropriate way is to merge records and how to find those that need to be merged. I don't think I want to ask home office to merge things for us because I'm not sure they would do it exactly how each of us would want it done individually. So there might be a little bit of cleanup from a merging perspective. More to come on that, Stefan. That's something that I'm working on. Like I said, I had two conversations about it already this morning about, getting some instructions out there on how to best do that. So I will more to come on that, hopefully in the next day or two. Um, any questions or thoughts around the Vanilla Soft Q or how to clean that up? Do you guys understand what I'm talking about there? Okay. So another question that I've had a lot of newer agents ask is like, when are the numbers going to hit? And so I just want to give you guys some expectations. So any supplemental insurance that we wrote, it depends on when you set in the application for that withdrawal to be taken. So you have the option when you're submitting an application for GRIC to say, I want it taken upon approval or upon effective date. And so if you selected effective date and it's January 1st, none of that business or revenue or income or FYCRs are going to flow until January 1st. If you said, I want it to flow on approval, which some of you did, you actually have cash flow flowing now, advances coming off of that, or commissions coming off of that, and you have FYCRs being awarded and things like that. So there were two different ways you could do that. I expect us to have a huge slug of FYCRs and new sales hitting the system January 1st because many of us said we want that withdrawal taken, on the effective date, which would be January 1st. For Medicare, Medicare will start to flow in early January. Medicare carriers cannot pay a dime before the effective date. So it doesn't matter what you did or didn't do with that. Those will begin to flow in January. Historically, United Healthcare has usually been the first one to hit the system. And we've had cash flow usually the second or third day in January from them. And then all the other carriers have kind of flowed after that. It continues to flow for several weeks into January too, as things get processed and updated. There's just a massive amount of policies and applications and everything that will be processed then. For ACA, so individual health insurance, that can oftentimes take 30, 60 days. Sometimes I've even seen it take 90 days for it to begin to hit the system. And different carriers work at different speeds. I would say the big national carriers are pretty good about getting things rolling. The small regional state specific carriers oftentimes are delayed 30 to 60 days before that revenue and those commissions start to flow. Now remember on ACA business, we do not get advanced. Whoop, everything just flickered. We do not get advanced and we do not get FYCRs on ACA business. So that will be basically monthly commissions that will be paid as earned. If like a new policy doesn't really hit the system until February, even though it was a January 1st effective date, you get paid for January and February. But sometimes it just takes a while for those commission flows to start to flow. And then those ACA plans will really be a month to month, wherever uh, most of those are per member per month. So those will begin to flow then, hopefully January, February, and potentially into March. So there is a little bit of a delay, but I'd expect supplemental insurance and Medicare to flow pretty quickly in January, with ACA, kind of straggling behind a little bit. Anybody have any questions on that? All right. So one other thing that I think you should consider, this is something I've done for many years. It's a big task, but if you haven't thought about it, it's worth thinking about, and that's a client Christmas card. Um, every year we do, I'll probably send, I don't know, 1,200 to 1,400 Christmas cards this year. And the way we do it, and this is just the way I've always done it, and many of you who are clients or have been agents in the past have gotten my Christmas card, but I just use Snapfish. We do a family photo in the fall, and I put it on there. I put my contact information on the back of the card with my corporate website, 800 number, kind of the office related stuff. And then we mail that out to every single one of our clients. We hand address all the envelopes. I actually have a gal who I know. She actually babysat for our kids for many years, and she does all of my. She addresses them all for me, and I like to do it that way because I think it makes it a little bit more personal. I will tell you though, sending out a Christmas card, especially with a picture of you or your family or something personal with it, I think it really endears clients to you. I can't tell you how many clients I have that I met with even this year who are like, I can't wait to see your Christmas card. I can't wait to see your kids growing up or whatever it is, you know? So I do think it's a very personal touch, a very personal connection that you can create. I will tell you, it's a little odd. I've walked into clients' houses before where my family's Christmas card is hanging on their refrigerator, which, other than being a client, I don't know these people real well. So it's a little odd at times. But I do think that's something worth thinking about or worth doing. If you don't have, if you don't have the ability to get that done here for Christmas, you could do a happy holidays or a happy new year. You've got different things that you could do with that. But I do think that's a good thing to get in the habit of doing. Obviously a big part of that is curating that list of existing clients and their newest updated addresses and everything and kind of, working through that. We typically start by pulling the books of business from the carrier portals so that we can just pull them all together that way. That's kind of where we start with things. And then we try to get things as updated as we possibly can. The other thing that it does too is that we do get some returned ones each year, which helps us identify like which clients we didn't have the right address on file for. So we try to get those updated and resend those out as well. So I do think this is the time of year. Obviously, I can't believe it, but 10 days away from Christmas. And this is a good time to get those types of communications out as well. So I know there's a number of you who this was your first open enrollment season, um, and several of you are chomping at the bit to get involved in Medicare because you didn't do Medicare this year. And I'm open to that. I will tell you, my thought is that you don't really want to get too involved in Medicare until you've had some pretty significant success in the under 65 space. I think everybody's uniquely different on this, so I don't want to dissuade anyone, but I want to just be cautious about it. Um, I think the thing that is difficult is Medicare is a big thing to bite off, and the first year that you do it, you will probably take a step backwards to do it. Now, after that, you start taking steps forward. But it is a very regulated, very labor-intensive certification process to sell Medicare. Now, I will tell you, we are the best in the country when it comes to Medicare. We crush Medicare. I want you all to be involved in Medicare. But I also want you to be thoughtful about where you're at. Do you have the bandwidth to be able to, try to get involved in Medicare and continue to keep working in the under 65 space? I'll tell you, my recommendation has typically been that you don't want to think about Medicare until you've hit at least 25,000 FYCRs, so halfway to tier two, at a bare minimum 10,000 FYCRs. I just think it can be very overwhelming, and I've seen many people over the years try to do Medicare too early or right out of the gate, and they're just completely overwhelmed, and they end up failing in the business because it's just too much to take on. That being said, if you have an interest, if you did not do Medicare this year and you've gotten some sales, if you don't have any sales or you only wrote a couple of ACA deals, it's not time yet. Wait until you get some sales under your belt, finish out the open enrollment season. Let's see what we can do to get some cash flowing for you, get some transactions under your belt. Figure out how to actually sell in the under 65 space first. But if you're at 25,000 plus FYCRs and you're like, hey, this is something I really want to get involved in, reach out to me and let's have a conversation about it. I do have some training videos that we recorded that I'll probably end up opening up for a handful of you that want to do this and feel like you're in a position to do it. I don't want to overwhelm you though. I will tell you a big mistake that I saw a number of you make this year in your first year in the under 65 space is you bit off too much. Instead of getting three, four, five states, you went to a ton of states and you tried to sell in all these different areas and you got bogged down in licensing and appointments in those states and you don't know what the products are in that state. You don't know what the networks are. You just bit off too much. And I just want to make sure that as you transition into Medicare, that you're not biting off too much, right? So everybody has different capabilities. Everybody has different bandwidth and different personal circumstances going on. So, but I would say there's a few of you that I think are probably ready to start thinking about Medicare. And if you want to, there are probably some trainings and some things, some recorded stuff that we put together that you could begin working your way through over the holiday season. So reach out to me if that's something you're interested in, and I'll talk with you and your leadership, your sales leader, and just see if it makes sense for you. So I did want to just kind of put that out there. Any questions about Medicare? All right, so the last thing that I think is important to do, and I've asked my staff to do this for me before Christmas, and I'm going to be sending them the questions here probably later today or tomorrow. But I think you've got to like take time to look back and figure out what went well, what didn't go well, what are you going to change moving forward? Um, what can you do over the next 2 weeks to prepare yourself for next year, next season? Obviously, we've got the open enrollment that runs through January 15th at this point, barring any congressional changes. But I think you got to be really thoughtful. Cliff Carthauser talks about it this way. He says, oftentimes we get too wrapped up working in the business and we never take time to work on the business. I think this is the time of year to reflect a bit, to look back while it's fresh in your mind and say, what went well? What didn't go well? What do I need to change? What can I do over the next few weeks to get prepared for next year? I will say, moving into 2026, those of you who have cut your teeth in the last 90 to 120 days on live transfers are not as plentiful outside of the annual enrollment open enrollment season. Live transfers are a very expensive way to build a business. And for many of you, you were funded by others, myself, your sales leader, things like that as we work through this. And I hope that gave you, the foundation that you need to be able to launch. But I think it's a hard thing to say, I'm going to 100% rely on live transfers for my entire career. It's a very expensive thing. And we're talking $40 a lead. And some of you have spent thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars over the last couple of months trying to, really get some sales and get some things going. So I think you've got to have, that going on, but you've got to start thinking about what else am I going to do? And I'd go back to some of our conversations over the last couple of weeks around your agent cookbook, and I'd ask you, do you have a cookbook and are you executing the cookbook to design? Do you have a plan and are you executing the plan to design? And I would be willing to bet that many of you like lost your way on your cookbook and you're not executing it to design right now. That's okay. You have an opportunity to reset and recalibrate for the new year, but I think you've got to take this time over the holidays to do a little bit of that. Reset, recalibrate, figure out what do you want? How do you want to do it? I think it all starts with what do you want out of this business and what do you want out of your life? And then build that out. Yeah, I believe in living a life by design. I don't want to shoot from the hip. I don't want to be haphazard. I don't want to let things come to me. I want to go out and get what I want, but I want to do it in a way that is efficient, in a way that I've got a process and a system in place. I'll tell you, I've got a tremendous amount of systems and processes in place now. Some of them worked really, really well over the last 90 days. Some of them fell apart or broke down completely. And I'm going to be looking at all of my internal systems and processes and just saying, what can we do better and what can we build differently for next year so that this is easier and we have more bandwidth and, we can find more clients. I think a lot of you who are new, you've got to start thinking about the marketing aspect of things. What are you going to do to outreach to people in your community, to small business owners, to walk and talks? Are you going to get involved in networking groups and BNI groups and those types of things? Or are you going to continue to rely solely on somebody else generating leads for you and feeding them to you? I will tell you, you've got to have a funding mechanism if that's what you're going to do. And that is a very expensive way to do it. Going out and figuring out how can I generate leads? How can I engage with centers of influence? How can I do all the things that I've taught you guys to do? over the years. How can I do those and do those well and build a plan around those? I think this is the time of year to really start thinking, thinking through that. Um, I also think you've got to think about what you're going to change. What are you going to do different starting January 1st? Um, Many of us did an incredible job cross-selling this year. Some of you were terrible at cross-selling. And so if you did not have a great year of cross-selling, I think you've got to go back and look at your sales process. Um, if you didn't cross-sell well, you got to figure out why. Because other people did. Other people had an incredible year cross-selling, and not only did that drive an enormous amount of revenue for them, but it drove their FYCRs, it got them to new tier levels, and probably most importantly, they protected their clients much better. They filled the gaps and the holes. And so, what is your strategy to think about how can I cross sell? Not only with just the new clients that I engage with in 2026, because I do think that's a process and a system. Kevin McIntyre addressed that when we were up in St. Joe. Was that St. Joe? Yeah, St. Joe, Michigan, right before the AEP season. He had a plan in place. He told you guys what he was going to do, and he just consistently executed that same plan with every client engagement that he had. Right now, I think during the AEP OEP season, he's the number one supplemental salesperson in the country, and I think it's by close to 200 applications. And I talked to him this morning, and he was just talking through, it wasn't that difficult. He said, all I did was I built a plan and I built a process to make sure I was talking about products every single time. And I just followed that process. And the vast majority of the time, people were buying the supplemental insurance products. So for you guys who didn't cross sell well, you got to figure that out. You have to, or this is going to be a very difficult business and an uphill climb. If you're just an ACA enroller or just a Medicare enroller, we can make decent money doing that. But the big opportunity is around taking that initial engagement with that consumer and then cross-selling into other products. Asking questions in a way that you help them self-identify needs that maybe they didn't even know they had before they came to you. So you got to think through that. And then I also think there's another thought process you can kind of go down around all of these people that you sold something to, but you didn't cross-sell them. What does it look like to circle back with them? How are you going to do that? How can you position a policy review, maybe in January or February? We'll be talking as we get through the new year, some strategies around policy reviews and how you can do that. But I will tell you, top agents across the country, they have a definitive strategy. Once they make that sale, they're getting back in front of that client, sometimes 2 or 3 times in the first 90 days following that sale to make sure that they got their cards, make sure that they understand their network of providers, make sure they understand how to maximize their insurance, make sure they're getting their health savings account set up if they're in an HSA approved plan, making sure they understand the gaps and holes that are in their plan, and then making recommendations around supplemental insurance products to fill those gaps and holes. Making sure you have the conversation around life insurance and do you have enough of it? Are you properly protected on that front? What about disability insurance? What about long-term care insurance? We didn't set up a vision and dental plan. Is that important to you? I think there's a lot of additional conversations that can be had as we work through the next 60 to 90 days. But you got to have a game plan around how you're going to attack that and what you're going to do and how you're going to ask those questions and what that process is really going to look like. So I think those policy reviews, my big question is, what's your strategy around that? Because if your strategy is to not do a policy review, I think that's a terrible strategy. So, you guys have questions about any of these thoughts or questions that I've kind of posed here around policy reviews? Is there anything you'd like some additional clarity or input on around all that?
Silas, can I chime in?
Please do.
One of the things that I have done for years is I've always focused on, protecting people from medical bankruptcy. And I actually had a little shift this year because of what's going on with healthcare and the higher out of pockets and stuff like that. And I started looking more at looking at things like deductible protection plans, like using the hospital-wise or a guard plan with an accident plan. Because guys, when it comes down to it, there's two things that health insurance is not going to cover. It's not going to cover the max out of pocket, and it's not going to cover their monthly bills. And so when you sit there and show these people that this is a product that will give you cash that you can use however you see fit. If you want to use it towards your max out of pocket, go ahead. You can make payments on your max out of pocket. So if you want to use it to pay your light bill, you can. And I have just found by just asking that simple question and just saying, look, before you decide on which health plan you want, Let me show you the two things these plans are not going to cover. It's not going to cover the max out of pocket, which becomes real when you're sick. It's not going to cover your monthly bills. So if you got cancer, got in an accident, couldn't work for a month or two, what would that do to you financially? Guys, that's all you have to ask people, because whatever answer they give you is not a good answer. And that's how you get people emotionally involved in, I don't really need that. And then if you got the people that say, well, Steve, if I just got to come up with 10 grand, I've got that in the bank. Why in the world wouldn't you, if you've got 10 grand in the bank, you can afford the premium. Why wouldn't you want to shift the risk to an insurance company? It just doesn't make sense to me. And now I didn't sell as much, of the supplemental as I wanted to, because again, a lot of the people that I had to replace plans, they already had all that stuff. So, but again, for the people who didn't, I agree with Kevin. It was simple. On Medicare, it's simple. On ACA, it's simple. And it's really simple if you're showing someone a short-term plan or a med mutual. I mean, I had one I just did the other day. Their ACA premium was 1,800. I sold them a $700 Allstate plan and a $600 sup package. And they were still saving $500 a month, and they were happy. Where most of you would have just sold them the short-term plan. Oh, great, I got a nice little $700 short-term plan, because you're not even showing the other stuff on why it's important. Because again, Tony Letcher, just show it. If you show it every single time, people will buy most of the time. But there's got to be a legitimate reason. And I find the easiest thing to do is, how are you going to pay your max out of pocket? How are you going to pay your monthly bills, especially if you can't work? And it doesn't have to be this long drawn out process. I mean, I used to have a pain presentation where you don't need that anymore. It's, how are you going to handle these two things? And then show them the solutions. And again, you can use the hospital wise. I sold a lot of, not the health protector guard, just the guard plan. I got that idea from Zach. And it worked out really well on, this can help pay your deductible. You can get reimbursed for doctor visits, all that kind of neat stuff. But if they have health issues, you can do the hospital wise. And then you throw on the accident wise and the critical guard, and you've got yourself a nice little income protection package. That's all.
So I hope I hope some of you are a little bit convicted about maybe the fact that you didn't have these conversations when you should have. And I think there's an opportunity to circle back with these clients and just say, hey, I'd like to have a conversation. Number one, I want to make sure that you've got everything in place and answer any questions. But number two, there are some things that we didn't have time to talk about that I really feel we need to talk about. You have some risks and some exposure. When can we talk? And just get another conversation. And those conversations are not difficult, but I think really highlighting what Cav talked about. Most of these plans have $10,000 out-of-pocket maximums. Most people can't come up with $1,000 in an emergency situation. So how are they going to deal with $10,000 when that heart attack hits, that cancer diagnosis happens, or that major accident places them in the hospital? We've got to start asking those questions. What are you going to do? Are you interested in looking at some options to kind of fill those gaps and make sure that we're creating that emergency fund in the moment if you don't have an emergency fund intact? So I think all of you should start thinking through some strategies. You have some clients who now liked you enough to buy something from you. So circle back with those people, solidify that relationship, and really, I think solidify yourself as their trusted advisor by asking these questions and starting to figure out some solutions for them. I will tell you some of my biggest months from an FYCR perspective have been during the first quarter of each year, which is kind of weird, but it's often, and it's not just what we did during fourth quarter, but it's the conversations that you had that then spawned a second or third conversation where now you're getting into big supplemental sales, big life insurance sales, big long-term care insurance sales, those types of things. So I just want to make sure we don't walk past those opportunities, and then we make sure that we're taking care of the people who have already made a choice to trust us by buying a product from us. A couple of things in the chat box. Chase Strickland, and I want to give kudos to Chase. Chase probably took more live transfers than anybody else on the team. He came from a background kind of working in that type of a capacity and did a great job. I know at one point, I forget what day it was, he sent me a message and said he closed 71% of the live transfers that came in. I don't know if that was Saturday or Sunday. So great job. But Chase said, after completing an enrollment, I searched the CRM by their phone number. Normally, two files appear. Number one, the live transfer file, and number two, the enrolled file. I edit the live transfer file and put in their name, and then I go to the CRM and merge the two files into one. I think that's a great strategy and a great way to kind of clean things up, especially if you're working live transfers. Tallman says the holiday card is a must. It absolutely solidifies you as a part of their life and helps keeping the renewals in your book. Tallman, I'm going to call on you just a minute because I know you've had a number of personal records and new high water marks that you've achieved over the last 60 to 90 days. Um, I think you've gotten to a point in your business where it's just organically growing, and it's pretty cool to see what you're doing. But do you have anything you want to share from AEP OEP with the team?
I don't know. Not, I don't know that I've done anything different. I just think as you keep your clients happy and keep in contact with them, stuff grows. I mean, they just become your resource pool for appointments and leads. Between the marketing that I've done and keeping my clients happy, that's and the willingness to work. I mean, those are the things that just keep building everything every year.
I know you recently hit career milestone of 1.5 million, so congratulations. And I know
Thanks.
FYCRs, you're at a new high water mark just about every week right now, it looks like.
Yeah.
So doing some incredible things. I think it's awesome. I'm going to ask you to share your story a little bit more in depth at a later date, but I think
Okay.
you've got a great story to tell, and it's been fun to see what you've done in this business. So well done.
I guess I would just add, not that this happened this year, but something you said years ago about not being afraid to make an investment because they usually pay off. Everything I've done step by step over the past half a dozen years has generated more revenue than what I've paid for. Whether it was adding an assistant or starting with some marketing expense to then adding another one the next year because it was paying off. I mean, my 1099 is certainly significantly bigger every year than the marketing money I'm spending and adding to the mix.
Well, and I would always say, and I think you would agree with this, there's no better place to invest money than in yourself, especially if you believe in yourself and you know you're going to work hard, right? I don't think there's a
Yeah.
better place to invest money.
Yep. And again, just to reiterate what I wrote on there, because I was trying to wave you down while you were talking about the card. Same thing that you said. I mean, I only did a handful of in-home appointments this year, but there were more than a few that people had my card up still for some reason. Or the number of people that thank me for sending it and they're looking forward to the next one. And those people are the ones that are just going to funnel you leads with their referrals too. So
Agreed. 100% agreed. So Jarko said the ACA is the client farm team for Medicare. All of your clients will eventually be Medicare eligible, God willing, right? If you build a relationship with your ACA clients, they won't consider going elsewhere for Medicare. I completely agree with you. I think we have shifted more and more into the Medicare space over time, but I don't think there's anybody on the team that's exclusively Medicare because we look at that under 65 space as the farm team for Medicare. Um, Spalding, I agree. Pearls of wisdom from Cav. He says, always show hospital-wise or HPG guard. You'll be amazed at how many people want it. And in the words of Sam Letcher, our clients can't afford not to have these subs. And I would agree with that. You got to have that level of passion and conviction around it. It's just a matter of quoting it and showing it and making sure. And I tell my clients, you've asked me to be your advisor. And so my job as your advisor is to put you into a great plan, but also show you where the gaps and holes are in that plan, and then show you the products that can fill those gaps and holes, and let you make a decision how you want to, custom design your package of benefits. It's really as simple as that. My fear is that there are a number of you who just aren't even showing it, or aren't even quoting it, or aren't even talking about it. I promise you, if you just start by making sure you're showing it, um, you'll start to get some sales, you'll start to get some confidence, and things will begin to roll for you. So, well, I know we're at the top of the hour here. I hope you guys are all able to join us next week. It is going to be an extended 2-hour ADT session. but it's really going to be focused on recapping AEP, OEP, giving you some insights on what's going on within the industry because there are some industry updates I just haven't shared with you that I've been privy to. I'll have a couple of guest speakers coming in. We'll be, just analyzing how the best did what they did. This was the single best AEP OEP season we've ever had. I will tell you, I got a very, very kind note from Dan Garrison yesterday. The rest of the country was up about 2% over last year when it came to supplemental and life insurance sales. As of yesterday, we were up 60% year over year. McIntyre led the charge on that, but him and I were talking about it this morning, and he said, we've got so much more capacity because really, when you look at the numbers, it was a handful of agents that caused us to grow by 60%. If everybody can begin to understand the process and have some passion around what we're doing and how we're protecting our clients and start cross-selling at the level that many of our agents are now doing it, I think the sky's the limit. I just don't think I don't think we're even scratching the surface of what's actually possible. You look at our Medicare Advantage enrollments. I think last year we were at about 4,800, if I remember correctly, 4,900 maybe. This year we were at 72 or 7,300 applications. Our ACA, we'll know a little bit more today after the final call in. But our ACA, I think we're up 30 to 35% over the previous year. It's like every metric and every mark, we're up significant double digits. So I can't tell you how proud I am of what we've done together and how thankful I am to have all of you as a part of the team. I feel blessed to be in the position I'm in to be able to lead an organization like this. We're doing some incredible things and I want to keep it rolling. So I'm excited though to recap all this next week. Hope you're all able to join us. I'll get out that invitation before the day's done today, so everybody kind of can begin to get that on their schedule. And with that, we'll wrap things up. We'll do that one next week, and then we're going to take 2 weeks off after that. We're not going to do any ADTs or anything over the holidays. We'll be taking some downtime. I know I'm going to be traveling with my family a little bit, and so hopefully everybody will have a little bit of R&R during that time. But again, thank you guys for all that you did. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a great week this week. Get some sleep if you haven't had it in a couple of days. And again, congratulations on everything we've done. Take care, everybody. See ya.